Welcome to Driven. I'm your host, Paul Perrone. We're going to learn and talk about AI, robotics, autonomous vehicles, and so much more. Check us out at driven.show on the web and give us a thumbs up or subscribe here if you like the show. So kick back or buckle up and become driven. Nolan, thanks so much for coming back.
I'm driven to.
You're driven to, yeah. There's an infinite number of puns that can be
right. And some are punny and some aren't.
Right. We could just keep going forever. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
No. You as I may have mentioned, the first episode of Driven was with you because you suggested and inspired this whole podcast. You said you should do this because maybe you just thought I like to talk and don't shut up, which I understand, but maybe I do talk too much. I don't know, but it was a great suggestion because I've had many wonderful conversations. The first of which was with you in September of 2023. That's when the first episode of this podcast launched. And that's when we last had our conversation here.
Well, I've believed a long time that long form podcasts allow a person to get into more nuanced factors, like the levels of autonomy was one of those things that I had not really realized that somebody had put some rigor to prior into talking to you. And then, kind of the relative cost of sensors, the idea of AI versus, cameras versus LiDAR and radar and some of these other things. But I just feel like the public who's curious should be able to answer some of those questions.
Yeah, and it's like these half an hour, 20-minute shows. People are just in a rush to get their sound bites out, right? Very often it seems like they just want to get a sales point or a sound bite. I mean, we're not doing that here in this show, but that's just what those formats tend to drive people towards, and so it just becomes very repetitive. It feels very repetitive, and these long form conversations it's just like being a fly on the wall, watching two people talk about something cool. In this case, AI, robotics, autonomous vehicles, games, you name it, right? So,
yeah.
And so I appreciate you taking the time because it is a long form conversation, and I have my coffee here with my Jaws. It's my favorite movie, by the way, Jaws coffee cup.
Well, my favorite. See, I'm basically a romantic. My favorite movie, believe it or not, is Princess Bride.
Oh, that was a good one, yeah.
And I also really like The Matrix.
That was good, yeah. I tend to like the older movies. I don't know why. Jaws.
Well, I think, yeah.
Godfather.
Taming of the Shrew, Richard Burton and Elizabeth Taylor.
That's going way back, yeah.
That's going way back, but that's I really, really like Shakespeare stuff, and I don't know why that is. It's but sometimes when I'm feeling like the world's ganging up on me, I like to go into the YouTube St. Crispin's Day speech from Henry V. I don't know. Have you ever watched that?
No, I haven't. No.
You should do it. It's very uplifting.
Okay. But in our last discussion in September of 2023, we covered the gamut of things from autonomous vehicles, robotics, AI, and gaming, and even some of the things that you're doing with the fusion of all that with education, Exodexa. But there's been a lot that's happened since a year and almost a year and a half, maybe.
Massive amounts. Yeah.
Amazing. And we were predicting then what was going to happen with AI. And so we can kind of maybe go back and look to see. But some of those predictions are obviously coming true. What are your thoughts on what's impressed you the most over the last year and a half or however many years with respect to AI developments and what we're
Well,
seeing right
just,
now?
just the fidelity of what you can do with AI right now. And in some ways, its ability to write stuff and to compose was really surprising to me. Like, I asked it to do you get a kick out of this. I said, I want to do a musical in the style of Oklahoma in which a square ball named Pong wants to become round so that he can be attracted to Ms. Pac Man. And it wrote me a libretto for a musical that I thought to myself, boy, maybe I should produce this. And then I thought, okay, I have a lot of skills, but producing a musical is not even close to one of them. so, so it was one of those things that I had to put on the shelf and let it marinate a little bit.
So this was using like a tool, maybe like a Chat GPT or another tool,
Correct.
like
It
just to
was
get the
chat.
text description. Okay.
Yeah, I just got the text, but reading it through looked very fun, and the thing that you can do once you get that, you can say, okay, expand this. So like all musicals have an I want song, and then later on, because in some ways musicals are a hero's journey, and this one was a hero's journey, and and it turned out that Pong, as he moved through the musical, found out that it was not so bad to be square.
Did you? So you didn't publish that anywhere, any place?
I don't think so. No, I didn't. I
Would you
felt
like
it.
to publish it? I mean, put it out there or interested in that? I mean, because I think that sounds fascinating. I mean,
Yeah, maybe
are you gonna?
I should put it on. Would it be? I'm not a big social media guy. I probably should be, but I
I
just
think
got
you could
other.
put it on like Medium and then link to it from your LinkedIn or I don't know. I mean, I'm probably the worst person to ask. But yeah, I mean, Medium is kind of big. Substack, right? Those are kind of like
Oh
long
yeah,
form places
yeah.
to post things. I think these days, like versus
Well,
Twitter or whatever, which is a little shorter. You could probably post it to Twitter.
I think there's some AI that's coming along that I may be able to add music and actually characters to it, and maybe I could flesh it out to where it's kind of uh, you know, a very, very rough animation, because I have a feeling that you could do something like South Park uh, with a good soundtrack. Uh,
Well, that's 100% possible. In fact, one of the things I was going to talk to you today about is I've got 5 tools, maybe 6, loaded up. If we want, we can sort of do something in real time. But there's one of the tools, of course, is Chat GPT, the one you mentioned.
right.
There's Sora, which is by OpenAI, which generates video, and the video can be quite beautiful, just
Huh.
text to video. And then there's Suno, which creates music. So if you give it lyrics or if you tell it what you want to hear, so if you give it your lyrics, it can create a song around it, like the musical track.
Okay.
And you say,
Yeah.
I want it to be a country western song, or I want it to be, a 70s pop song, whatever, you name the genre. Um, and then there's some other tools, of course, like Mid Journey, where you can create image pictures. But it was over the holidays. I took I was feeling nostalgic, and I kind of used Sora to create a bunch of little videos, and I stitched together like a Christmas time, a holiday video set in the 1970s, kind of when I remember kind of growing up and experiencing the holidays in these different environments. It's just it's funny because it hallucinates and there's some weird crazy things that pop out of it, but it's really beautiful.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's amazing. And there's people putting these things, all kinds of videos like that online. One man video production studios, you know.
Well, one of my theories has always been that whenever you drop the cost of something and get rid of gatekeepers, that you get an explosion of creativity. That you know the the economics tends to stifle creativity because weird stuff is unpredictable. Predicting the future is hard, and so if you're doing a sequel, you can say, well, they like this, so then we'll just innovate around the edge a little bit, and then
Right.
it's going to be risk free. But that's not innovation. That's you know that's poor man's innovation.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, you live in the LA area. There's a lot of, I don't know. I guess I'm just assuming, or maybe do you come across many creative types who are in sort of film and music, uh,
Well,
and the
yeah,
arts?
yes, a lot, and I can say that. Well, the old joke is how do you get a L.A. screenwriter off your front porch? You pay for the pizza. Uh, but anyway, it's a bad joke, but it's applicable. Uh, and I think that a typical conversation at a cocktail party is, I've got this idea for a movie and I just can't get it made. But, and that's the other part that constantly is baffling to me. When I see a movie and then watch the credits, and you see hundreds of people to make what looked like a pretty simple movie, and you say, what? You know?
So, like, what's the feeling about use of this technology? Because again, you do have exactly what you've just mentioned, this low cost ability to generate kind of creative video, and in the case of this other site, music even. It's still in the early stages, of course.
Well,
There
the
are definitely rough edges, but like, it's not.
well, the unions are just scared shitless of it, and they've been trying to write stuff into contracts that you can't use it and all that. And so it's funny. I actually think that a lot of the gatekeepers are going to kind of go away. Um, you know, even the streaming services have a different structure. Uh, Movie theaters and the studios, they all have contracts, but there's there are a lot of areas that don't have gatekeepers now.
Yeah, well, I mean, what's to prevent somebody sitting at their home in the middle of, Kentucky, generating a video and putting it on YouTube, and it's a watchable 30-minute show.
Exactly, and all of a sudden you get, I think, if you get 100,000 subs, you can start making money. I
Hmm.
think less than that, it's hard to get advertisers. But the minute you get advertisers, you can start making. I know a guy who was doing literally millions of dollars in YouTube videos, and
Wow.
he he does woodworking. That's his thing. Who
For
knew?
the video, it's woodworking
Yeah,
on the video. Okay.
yeah.
That's a pretty good audience, I guess.
I guess
People like to do woodworking. I don't.
Well,
Probably more people would be into woodworking than, say, autonomous vehicles, is my guess. I don't know.
I agree.
Got to expand our horizons here. But AI is appealing to everybody, and that's why this is such an interesting topic here. So, I mean, there have been there have been a number of things. Any thoughts on the impact of this technology and sort of the worlds that you sort of intersect with the most, be it sort of robotics and AVs or education, gaming,
Well,
that you've
the
seen in the last year?
yeah, the thing, I've got Exadexa, and it's basically gamified learning, and
Mm-hmm.
we're putting together games that when you complete the game, you've got the knowledge of a high school student. That's kind of the big idea on the hill. Um, but there's a second factor, and that is tutoring. And it turns out that AI tutoring is actually preferred by the student
Hmm.
over a college student. And I can provide AI tutoring for a de minimis amount of money, which basically democratizes tutoring, which is kind of helpful because kids struggle with things. And being able to have some homework help with a AI is really good. And and I've noticed something with my grandkids is that they use the Amazon Echo and the Google Home a lot, and it's kind of AI, but it's like a help. And I find myself doing a lot of times when I just want the population or something. If I'm heading to Denmark, I say, what's the population of Denmark and what is it known for? Is there any special foods that are, and you get good answers.
Yeah. Interesting. And so the AI tutoring is fascinating, because it can be very hard to find a tutor. I know this. I've got we've got a student in school, a son in school, and it can be hard to find a tutor, and then find a time when it's convenient, and especially if you live, too far away from from where this tutor is. So, like that, are there these AI tutors? Is that something that Exadexa is doing? Um,
I've actually got a different company that I'm spinning up called Lablore,
okay.
and it's a physical location because today I think if we talk about like Mathmasium or Sylvan Learning Centers or things like that, I think that a lot of people don't realize that there's something else going on when you're talking about tutoring or school, and that is babysitting. You know, mom and dad are working or busy. Um, how do we take care of the kids? And so school during the workday tends to do that, but not very well because mom and dad live, 9 to 5, 9 to 6, and school's out at 3 or 2:30. And so there's this gap time that people talk about. This is when kids get into trouble, you know,
Yeah.
and uh, and so there's a need for supplemental education during that gap time, and I think I can provide that with AI tutoring and have it be really cheap as babysitting.
Interesting. Interesting. Do you know any good math AI tutors right now for like an eighth grader?
Yes and no. Um,
Or
Arithmetic,
is that
yes,
coming? That's still coming, right?
it's coming.
I see.
Um, and there's actually some interesting videos from Khan Academy with various things that algebra and that I recommend. But the problem with Khan Academy and a lot of these is they're based sort of on sage on the stage as opposed to interactive. And you remember 5% of what you hear, 10% of what you see, 80% of what you do. And so anything that it's a looky-loo is not very effective.
Yeah.
That's why tutoring provides an extra level of interactivity, which does this. It's what you do,
Mm-hmm.
and gamification. It's what you do.
Oh yeah.
Like like in our games, you require a response by the student every 3 to 5 seconds, so that it's doing, 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 doing.
And
Otherwise, you
what kind of games are these that, like, I guess that Exodexa makes? Are these like,
well,
um,
our game is called The Last Explorer, and you're basically on a planet, and you're stuff is breaking, and you're fixing it, and in order to fix it, you have to solve problems. Some of them are
okay,
math problems, some of them are logic problems and things like that.
got it. Now, is it hard to like kind of insert that in so it feels like it's part of the game, or is it just sort of a discrete, you've got to solve this problem sort of breakaway where where you solve
Kind
the
of,
problem?
and sometimes, you run into a toll gate in which the evil wizard is asking you questions. You know, it's not as good as I'd like it to be, but it's pretty good.
Well, I remember. Well, I'll bring us back to on the Atari 2600. Like there was basic math, I think it was, or
Oh yeah,
there was there was a
that was
math.
talk about a turkey cartridge. We, we oh
I used it. I played that game. I mean, I played probably all of them at one point, maybe.
yeah. Well, I think that it goes down in history as the least purchased cartridge in our portfolio.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, which I thought, parents are going to like this and that sort of thing. But I think with a lot of things, once they put on the hat, this is for fun, that's then all the responsibility goes out the window.
Well, if it's any consolation, I remember playing it. I don't remember. I just remember. I remember it. The addition and subtraction. I don't
Yeah,
remember what else there was, because maybe that was at about my level at the time. I don't know.
yeah.
But
I think we did some multiplication, but it was mostly addition and subtraction.
now
But
AI, I've heard generative AI. I've heard from different people that there's some impediments with generative AI in being able to reliably solve math problems. Now, GPT is certainly solving them, but it's also getting, I have the Chat GPT Pro mode, but it makes mistakes, right?
yeah,
I see some of those. Um, do I don't know if you have any sense for why that is, or if you've heard the same thing and have any thoughts on how that's going to be addressed.
I've heard that. I've never actually seen it make a mistake uh, that yet. Um, but what what people have told me is that the AI has, as part of its program, a desire to please, and sometimes they it takes a certain amount of liberty to give you what they think you may want. I don't know if that's true or not, but it sounds reasonable to me.
Interesting. Yeah. Um, I guess that could be bad if you're using the math to sort of generate like airplane models or something for live
Yeah,
aircraft
not
or
good at
something.
all.
um, but yeah, I mean, I did a paper recently, and I used the pro model to kind of like look at my math and look at stuff just to see what it would do, and it definitely made some mistakes, but but then there's different tools out there, and there's this thing I guess I don't know if you heard of it. It's called temperature, right? Where like I think it's called temperature, where you set this value and you can make the answers more precise, or you can make
Mm.
them more sort of hallucinatory. What's the word?
Oh,
Hallucinatory? I don't
hallucinatory.
know.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Hallucinatory. Um, and so like obviously you want more precision for sort of math and science related questions, and you might want the hallucinations for the more creative content.
Right.
But then there's a limit because you're going to have a person with like 7 fingers or something in a video, and 3-headed dogs, and but then maybe you want that creativity. So um I don't know, like I guess in the education world it would be more, you'd want more sort of the precision aspect of it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you want some rigor in,
Yeah.
of course, when we're talking about multiple fingers, you can talk about Maine. There's a couple of cities in Maine where the average person has 6 fingers.
Really?
Really?
is that true?
It's
Okay.
true.
I've
Yeah.
never heard that. I've
Yeah.
heard about the 6-toed cats down in Key West at Ernest Hemingway's house, if you heard
Oh,
about that.
I haven't heard about that. So,
Yeah,
hey,
he had
we're
6-toed
expanding each
cats.
other's world.
Maybe they need to get together.
Right.
Six people look like their pets. So there are people with 6 fingers up in.
Yeah.
Wow.
And a
Wonder
lot
what.
of times that extra finger is kind of like this. So it's not a real good finger.
Interesting. I wonder
Yeah.
if, yeah, maybe hundreds from years from now we'll see that has some evolutionary purpose.
See, now I'm just wondering if we did chat GPT right now and ask about people with 6 fingers, where are they? What it would say. I'm wondering what the database.
We could find out. We could find out. I could.
Yeah.
So that's one aspect of this I wanted to see. I mean, we could try. I mean, it could fail miserably, but we could do some live, if you want, live
Sure.
AI. I could share my screen, and we could look at some of these tools. You want to try it?
Yeah, I'd like to see some of the output of the videos created.
Yeah, let's do
Yeah.
it. All right,
Let's do that.
I'm gonna screen share here, and
Okay.
we can always edit if something profane pops up.
Hey,
You
we'll
never
get
know.
more views if it's I tell you, profane works.
Yeah, I know. Well, so yeah, might need a special rating for the show. Let me see. Share. Here's this. All right, so you can see these windows here.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is, I'll just show you. I've got 5 tools loaded. I've got Chat GPT, right? And
Right.
they have all these models, but I've got the pro mode on, which is good at reasoning. This one's
Okay.
good at coding, advanced reasoning. So we can check these things out. There's also, I don't have this loaded, but there's also operator Chat GPT, which can actually browse websites for you. It clicks on things and it'll search for.
Huh.
So then there's Sora. This is the video generator. I can show you, like, you'll see some videos. Let's see. Here's like one I just did of like an old dining room, right? I don't know if you can see
Wow.
that. Yeah, and then I was trying to do like a Christmas time gathering. Here's people. So anyway, I'll show you more of that. We'll go into more of
Wow.
that. And then Suno, this is the one that can create music, songs. You give it lyrics and it can create songs. This one called Rosebud generates games. Probably pretty simplistic games, but
Right.
games nonetheless. We could create a game. And again, it's all text. It's text. In this case, this is text to games, right? This was text to video, and then there was text to audio. And then the Claude, this one is really good at code, I think, generation, right?
Uh-huh.
So I've used this one to kind of generate like code that I don't want to create. That's sort of more redundant. And then Then there's Midjourney, which you've probably seen, where you can create pictures. This one was just I tried to create a photorealistic picture of a group of clinically deranged and intense engineers sitting around a conference table having a meeting. And it came up with this nightmare. So for some
Wow.
reason, they were all in lab coats, but
Well, of course it would.
yeah. but like choose your poison. What should we do? What should we? You want to try ChatGPT
I'm kind of curious about the music one.
the music
And
one.
so,
Okay.
and I'm wondering, what if we were to have, could we have it do a song in the style of a song from Oklahoma?
Song. Okay.
The cowboy and the cowboy and the farmer should be friends. And
I think we should
Traviata,
specify the play, right?
Yeah.
From the play
Oklahoma.
Yeah.
And the song is the cowboy and the farmer should be friends.
Okay.
And in the style of La Traviata, the opera.
The cowboy and the what? The farmer
Yeah.
should be friends
In the style of La Traviata.
I think I'll spell this right. Traviata, like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, is that how? Did I put Travolta? Traviata. Is there two T's? Or one?
I don't know. I
put
know.
two
That's
T's in
probably
there.
close enough.
Okay. So just it may flag it because it says, it's copyrighted, because sometimes and we can do the newest, most creative model. So we'll see. We're going to hit create and we'll see if it flags it for, it looks like it's going to do it. Okay. So now just from my audio perspective, we'll have to see if I'll be able to play it for you to hear it. Okay, so this one's ready. It's called Cowboy. It named it Cowboy Y Agriculture. I guess that's Spanish spelling.
It's probably Italian.
Italian? Yeah. Okay. All right.
Well,
let's see what we got.
La Traviata is an Italian opera.
Okay.
No, that's a Puccini.
So here it shows you the lyrics it generated over here, and the verse, the bridge. It does a full song style with chord. So let's see if we can hear it. Is it playing? Let me see. I might have to do some editing here. Are you playing it?
Rides in with grit, stone tough, dusty boots, and life is rough. Farmer tills the earth with care, working hard with hands laid bare. Fields are green, crops grow high, cattle roam under the sky. Both are men of solid pride. Lives are intertwined worldwide. Cowboy agricultor deben ser amigos. Ambos sueñan con trigos y vaqueros testigos.
Are you able to play it, Nolan?
Yeah, I got it. It's actually kind of good. Okay.
Cowboy rides in the green store tough. Dusty boots is rough. Farmer. Well, there you go. Well, I'll play it here for everybody, and I'll edit it to make it sound like we just enjoyed that song.
Okay, that was fun. Wow.
All right, so that's a music generation, I guess. Yeah,
I was
I
very impressed.
I can share the screen, but I guess I can't. So, like, what about now? There's some tools that are just all visual here, which would probably be easier to muck around with. Uh, Anything else you want to try, or like just from a video perspective? I think that this is. I think Sora is pretty cool. Have you tried Sora?
No, I have not.
So this is from OpenAI, and we could do like we'll just do the one video. We'll give it one shot. That way it's quicker, but we'll ask for a 10-second video. So describe like what would be the first scene of this music video for the song that you just created?
Um, let's see.
Cinematic view.
A a fence with corn on one side and cattle on the other.
Is that it? Start
Yeah,
with that. All
I
right.
think
So and you can
because in
storyboard.
Oklahoma, there's this struggle between the cattlemen really don't like the idea that the farmers are putting up fences.
I see.
So that's kind of the deep thing. The reason I know this much about Oklahoma is it was my high school senior operetta, and I was cast as the farmer. I was Andrew Carnes in the thing, so I was a thespian in high school.
I see. All right, it's almost done. 94. Here we go. I guess it's doing two views of corn. Oh, no, wait. No, this is one video and it just did a split screen.
Aha.
That's what we got.
Cool.
And you can edit the prompt, like where we can say with a like
A
a
cowboy, uh, galloping down the fence line.
galloping down the fence line. Spell that. Oh, yeah. Should I leave out cowboy with assless chaps? Just kidding. Sorry. And the cattle on the other with a cowboy galloping down the fence line. Okay, we'll see what happens here. New video. It's pretty quick.
Very.
And this is 480p. You can do, obviously 1080, but if you want to just sort of, and then you can do it could do storyboards where you kind of say these, kind of sketch out what like the scenes are in these 5 to 20-second videos, right? And so by compiling all these views, like it's at least at the stage where you can make like a music video, right?
Gotcha.
Something that's 3 minutes, probably pretty easily, by stitching together the scenes. You can even blend. You can do blending where you can blend from one scene to another so that it's a seamless transition. But here we go. We're going to see the result here in 3, 2, 1, 0, -1. This is called Cowboys Frontier Gallop. Let's see what we've got here. It's a pretty.
Yeah, they
I
got it.
typed in cinematic view, and so it kind of. So this is a little bit of a hallucination because there's a horse without a. On the right side, there's a horse without a cowboy, I
Mm-hmm.
think, and then, but and then the horse kind of makes a little unnatural.
Yeah, there's a
But
little bit of uncanny valley going there with the horse.
it's better than Edison's first movie
Oh,
video with the horse.
lots better. Yeah.
So it's pretty good. Now, of course, ChatGPT, which you've used, and I don't know if you've used the pro version, but it can do like some really sophisticated reasoning. So if you've got like something like a problem you want to solve, uh, it can do something. Or you could say if you have like an idea for we can tell it to invent a new product, right? Like that
Mm. Well,
we could
I
invent
was thinking,
gravitronics.
I was thinking about a YouTube video,
Hmm.
um, and the idea would be that maybe it's 3, 4 minutes, but the
Hmm.
idea is that I wanted to take each of the signs of the zodiac and have a person that is exemplified by that. So, like if you're Aries, that you are Aries squared, where you, and whenever you take a characteristic and draw it to extreme, that usually creates mischief. And I thought that it would be interesting to, like, I'm an Aquarius, and we're supposed to be inventive and a little bit crazy.
Huh.
So, what would be a story of someone who is a very interesting there? And I thought that I could do that would give 24 episodes, of which, you know, male Aquarius to the extreme, female Aquarius to the extreme. And then if I, on the channel, if those were successful, uh, I could really mash it up by, there's this thing where Aquarius and Capricorns aren't supposed to be together because we're right next to each other in the zodiac.
Hmm.
And it turns out I'm Aquarius and my wife is a Capricorn, and I think that's why I've always said that our marriage is based on conflict. But anyway, it was just one of those things that I thought might be interesting and might have some gravitas, because I think people are kind of in a love hate relationship with the signs of the zodiac.
Yeah, it's funny. Like growing up, from the '70s, and sort of dribbling over into the '80s, you heard a lot more about it. I don't. Yeah, people. I mean, I used to read your horoscope, and do
Yeah,
people even do that anymore? I don't know. I mean, I don't think like I'm not even sure my son's aware what like the signs of
mm,
the zodiac are anymore. I don't. Yeah, it was like sort of a bigger thing back in the day, but it could be reinvigorated with this show that you're talking about. Sort of bring it
yeah.
to the.
Well, I thought there could be another interesting thing on for a YouTube video is to have a series of readings of the tarot deck. I don't
of
know.
of the tarot deck.
Yeah.
Explain like yeah, I mean, I think so for folks here. What is the tarot deck and what's the
Well,
historical?
it's a deck of cards that I think it was actually invented by gypsies. I'm not sure about that. We should ask ChatGPT, but anyway, uh,
Yeah.
uh, and it has, you know, the suits are uh, wands. You know, they're four suits, and then a whole bunch of honors of
Mhm.
things that have the hanged man and the lovers and the tower and a lot of really interesting things. And gypsies used to use the tarot deck to you know do somebody's fortune.
Oh, right, right. Okay. Got it. Got it. So yeah, so I've seen those in movies. I've heard the term tarot deck, but I guess I've never. And it's funny, like I think even on the Ocean City, New Jersey boardwalk, there's still like I'll read your fortune kind of
Yeah.
like little hole in the wall. But okay,
Well, and
yeah, I've
sometimes
seen
yeah, and
seen those in
sometimes in
movies.
movies, they'll be doing this, and all of a sudden the center card will be the hanged man, which means you're going
Right.
to die in the next 20
He's done
minutes.
for.
you know,
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we just got a glimpse of AI there. The with some of these tools, and I think and we can do more if you want to try some things out. But the code aspect of it, I don't know if have you explored some of the ability of these tools to generate
I have not, but
um,
my son
code.
has, and he
Okay,
says he's building games, and in fact he did a game that's doing quite well right now called Escape Academy. It's kind of like an escape room in a video game format, and
okay,
it's on Xbox and PlayStation and PC. And he says that his new game that he thinks he's going to be able to uh, complete it in 3 times the speed that he would have otherwise. That ChatGPT or one of them, I'm not sure which. He says that AI is creating over 2/3 of his code, and he
wow,
says
yeah,
you just plug it in. And he says the thing that's really interesting is that it used to take a couple of weeks to port it to PlayStation or to Xbox. He says now it's 10 minutes.
yeah.
The porting is 10 minutes, and that's a big savings.
Yeah, I agree, and I think people who already know about programming um, can really harness it and use it. Um, like there's like the people who already know how to program can really use it to orchestrate complex things because you're like, I want this piece, I want this piece,
Yeah.
this needs to integrate with this, and you're kind of like a conductor, and you might have to drop in and sort of edit some code. But even for folks who have never coded before in their life, just with some basic information can generate applications, which is amazing. So you can say, generate me a Swift, for iOS or a Java based graphical interface to do XYZ. And then you have something that you can run on your computer within, 10 minutes time. It's amazing.
Right. Yeah. Well, you know, I ran into this a lot when I was doing some stuff with Arduino Nanos, and I
Hmm.
found that I didn't have to program that there were libraries, and maybe I'd have to change a variable, but you know I could do in 10 minutes what used to take me a Saturday afternoon, you know, just with these simple micros.
Yeah. Yeah. So you were using GPT to generate some of this, or just using the libraries in this
No, I
case?
just use the libraries.
I see. Well, now you can take it a step further and just have the GPT just create the whole thing for you, right? I
Yeah,
mean,
I don't have any nano projects right now. My son does, but
well, it's extraordinary. I mean, that Claude tool can generate sophisticated, it's pretty good, and so's GPT. And now you've heard about some of the open source tools. I think last time when we in September, I talked a little bit about Hugging Face, which is like this place where people upload all their AI open source AI engines and tools and what have you. And they even have an app store, quote, kind of like an app store, but it's with open source AI tools and what have you. But like a few weeks ago, I don't know if you heard of DeepSeek, made
Yes.
the news. Yeah. So now there's some questions as to whether how much it really costs to develop. I think there was some bluster there, but the fact is, I guess there was a group in China that developed this sort of AI competitor to to ChatGPT, or had some equivalent capabilities, right?
Yeah.
And it's open source, right? So
Yeah.
it's like, what does that mean for these commercial tools? But like that has actually been around for a while. Like Meta had Llama, has this Llama engine, and you can, it's called Llama, and there's all these open source engines that you can just run on your computer, on a regular sort of gaming computer at home,
Yeah.
that are just, can be, just as sophisticated for most of what you want to do with some of these online tools like ChatGPT and what have you, but you can do it on your own hosted computer.
Well, I think it was credited with taking 10% of the market cap off of Nvidia.
It did. And, or I guess I saw that, I don't know if it was 10%, but I did see that it affected the whole market like one day, right?
Right.
Everybody's, all the high tech companies are stuck. But and it was, I think people were, it's funny, I guess everybody in the market was misled because they just didn't understand, I guess, that the impact wasn't going to be as severe. But it's like, yes, it's as, it wasn't necessarily, it was debatable as to whether or not it was really developed for $5 million or whatever,
Yeah.
bullshit number they put out there. It certainly costs more than that.
Well, I
But
think
still, they made it open source, and that was kind of a bold move. But that's going to happen. There's all these you know not just China based, but other groups within the U.S. and all over who are making open source engines, right? And they're just naturally going to be as good as some of these engines are now, and it's just going to be a continual race to see
yeah.
who's got what that's better. I mean,
Well, the thing that I don't feel like the revenue stream has ever been appropriate for the market cap. You know, there has to be a revenue stream commensurate that gives you a reasonable return on the market cap that it's costing. And it seemed like AI was one of those areas that was a huge mismatch.
yeah, I agree. Like, how is OpenAI making money? I mean,
Yeah. And how does it do it in the future?
right, right. Especially as the competitors come along, it just seems like ChatGPT, or any, just say company A, I don't want to just pick on them. They can come up with an AI engine on a particular month, day of the year, and then a month later, someone comes up with something better, and then it's going to happen at such a fast pace, month by month, that like, who's going to really sort of, like, how can you're just going to be continually kind of competing against yourself a month from now. It's just going
Yeah.
to keep on accelerating so fast, because it's almost, I guess, like what happened to hardware companies as sort of the Moore's law kicked in for just, hardware platforms just became cheaper and cheaper. What you had one year was worth half of what it was just the year before, the next year, I guess.
I can
That just,
remember spending $2,000 for a damn monitor, you
yeah.
know, you know, and now, you go into Amazon and for 99 bucks you get a monitor that's three times as good.
we Yeah, I mean, it's like I had, of course, yeah, a TV that costs more than what my son's 84-inch TV currently costs, and he got it for like $1,000.
Yeah,
It's it's um it's amazing. I guess maybe it was a little more, but it's the prices are amazing. Not just TVs, but like processing power, of course, is still
yeah,
coming down. And I just think with AI, because it's all bits and no hardware, um, you know, the AI that you have now is going to be 1/100th the value of of what it is like a year from now. I mean, a year from now, it will be 1/100th the value of what it is today.
yeah.
It's just it's things are happening so fast. So I don't know what do you think is going to happen with these AI companies and the companies that are using it?
Well, I think that there's a hardware component. Like Musk is building a great big farm that
Hmm.
uses so much energy it has to be next to a nuclear plant, and I think Microsoft's doing the same thing, and they're using these NVIDIA clusters that are in terms of how much calculation power they have, or like, you know, teraflops, you know, and stuff like that, and so what does that mean? You know, like in some ways, NVIDIA started out doing graphics processing for games, and then all of a sudden that same tech turned out to be really good Bitcoin miners.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden AI came along. Talk about being in the right tech at the right time, to create something. I think they were the biggest, highest market cap company in the world uh,
Hmm.
last week. Uh, and so once you have all this hardware in place and it's just crunching and crunching and crunching, um, I guess one of the promises is folding proteins to solve curing cancer or something.
Hmm.
That's an area that I am really weak on. Is the whole biochemistry side of cancer mitigation. But I think that there's a lot of things that will be solved, and then on the other side of the planet we have quantum computing. It's supposed
Yes.
to, but that solves a different kind of problem, and I'm not sure exactly what kind it does. But
I guess it allows massive parallelization, right?
yeah,
So if you have, um, you know, presumably that could help with, the increasing the rate at which you can train neural networks, maybe if they're running on
maybe.
these massively parallel processing environments. But I guess it kind of speaks to the fact that, and maybe you saw this in other industries that you've been involved with, like some of the infrastructure companies like Microsoft and or the platform companies, right? Really kind of wedged themselves in and became like these powerhouses.
Yeah,
But now the platform being the AI, if you consider the platform the AI engine, those companies are just going to be outpaced potentially much more rapidly. And so maybe the value is really on the applications that are leveraging these platforms that are changing rapidly to do things, as opposed to um, the platform companies themselves, which may be just sort of vaporized by open source. I don't know.
well, I think a good question would be how much of it is dynamic and how much of it is static? Meaning, what kind of advantage is somebody who has this giant computing cluster, with you know able to calculate gigaflop or teraflops and all that, which and what kind of problems are they trying to solve?
Well, I think what you're pointing to is, okay, well, maybe it's having massive amounts of hardware infrastructure, these GPUs and these data centers where you can do all this learning certainly confers certain advantages, and that's an expensive barrier to entry. But I guess on the flip side, with some of these neural network problems, I guess if you're training the neural network on the corpus of all human knowledge, you need those massive data centers. But if you're trying to solve like a specific problem, like a coding problem, or a some sort of medical cure or what have you, you don't necessarily need that massive data center because you have a much more specialized sort of system, I guess.
Right.
And so, and of course with Moore's law, like what you need in a data center will be what you need in a living room, will be what you need and just that sits on your desk 10, 20 years from now, right? So how long is that advantage conferred by having massive amounts of compute power, especially if you're going to use AI to solve specialized problems that do something, as opposed to just some sort of general let me ask you anything engine. I don't know.
Well, taking it to the thing that we're working on, uh, the question of autonomy in driving. And there's the Musk approach of getting all this feedback of all the Teslas that are driving around out there, that are cameras and feeding into the database, and ours with algorithms that use sensor data there. And I think the Tesla theory is that just video cameras are sufficient, whereas we are a little more sensor dependent. And so I think that the real question is, once we can show that we are safer than human, that's probably good enough, or is it?
Yeah, well, I guess a couple things there. One, yeah, I think we're sensor agnostic, right? We try to be,
Right.
Be it camera data, lidar data, radar. We translate it into some sort of generic representation depending on the sensor modality, and then use that information. Not necessarily specific to one type of sensor. Of course, cameras will give you color, and you can't get that with lidar, and so that's one parameter to consider. But there's a different way to use AI. There's different ways that companies have used AI and autonomous vehicles. One, like it has historically was used, or at least started out, to do pattern recognition, which it was really good for, the deep learning neural networks, to kind of train, like, this is a pedestrian crossing the road or something, and to detect a pedestrian or something and do that pattern recognition capability. Now with generative AI, and so that was, for example, very hard to, if something went wrong, you couldn't really figure out what went wrong, because you'd have to look at these neural network weights, this matrix of numbers, and it's impossible to figure out by looking at all these numbers what the heck went wrong, right? You just have to retrain it. Yeah. But with generative AI, and with one thing that we're doing, as you know, is we can generate the configuration data and even some of the code that feeds our software engine, our general purpose robotics operating system, right? So because it's programmable with configuration data, and it's got this modular code structure, so we can use generative AI to generate things that are verifiable and validatable with the human eye, or even with tools, right? Because it's more it's text, it's understandable, and then that's used directly by our software to run it. So I think there's been this historic kind of tension between, let's use AI, deep learning or neural networks or what have you, with our AI system, with our AV systems, to kind of bring them higher levels of capability faster, but they weren't verifiable and validatable. Now with sort of, I think, our approach and maybe others using generative AI to generate artifacts that can be verified and validated, and then used to give you that same level of accelerated autonomous behavior, I think that's a different approach than what Tesla's doing, but I think it's a powerful approach, and I
Right.
guess, but they certainly have a
Well, you have the
lot of market cap.
advantage. Well, I think you have the advantage of verifiability, which where the other one does not. As much, anyway. I don't know.
Yeah, I know of no known way to verify and validate just a neural network, like for correctness and completeness. I don't think that exists, because it's a probabilistic engine too. Doesn't always give you the same result.
Right. Incidentally, um, which of the sensors is best in a blizzard?
In a blizzard, well,
That's where sight is really compromised.
yeah, I mean, cameras suffer and LiDAR kind of suffer. I mean, really everything suffers.
Oh, okay.
Probably shouldn't drive in a blizzard. I think radar, maybe have the best sort of capability of being able to kind of detect things, but it doesn't have the resolution. Um, Certainly, I mean, GPS and what have you might not be affected by it, but yeah, I mean, the same things that affect human sight affect cameras in that sense. And I would say probably radar's your best bet in driving slow enough to kind of not get into an accident. A graceful degradation and an approach to driving in such conditions is
Well,
probably would be my go-to approach.
I grew up in Utah, and occasionally, I'd be in a situation where the only thing I would be willing to do was to follow the taillights of the car in front of me. You could kind of not see anything else.
Right. That might be the blind leading the blind in that case, though. You never.
Or lemmings off the same cliff.
Right. Right. Yeah. Well, we did a project where there was there was the roads were whited out. It was up in like this northern eastern portion of Canada, and the whole problem was to kind of keep just using kind of GPS and RTK, helping the driver keep the vehicle on the road, because they couldn't see the road.
Wow.
And so it was kind of an ADAS type function in that sense, but it
was that ice road truckers going to Yellowknife?
it could have been an episode, but we didn't. No, but
Right.
But we sent one of our most okay, I don't want to say it. Like, we sent one of our engineers up there who's like a Starbucks kind of guy, right? And he was up there in this camp in something called, like, I don't know if it's called like Deception Bay or Death Throes or something. It was like
Right.
It was some sort of, and they were just cut off from, like, there was no flights coming in or out, and he was stuck up there, and there was, of course, these really rough kind of people who kind of worked at this location, and he asked them if they had any lattes, and he almost was killed, I think. But And they just held out like a pot of like old coffee that was
Right.
5 days old. But anyway, that was a good project despite the trauma it caused one of our engineers. um, well,
What?
the I guess just kind of speaking to a little bit here, just real quick. Um, we've talked about AI and these different applications and I just wanted to, because I everybody's interested in gaming and you've been doing a lot obviously in that space for all of your life. What do you see with I guess is there any sort of thing that stands out as like the coolest application of AI in gaming besides just like, I know people are using it to create artifacts in the world and I mean AI I guess to some extent has been used in gaming for a long time, just different kinds of AI. But like is anybody using generative AI like you said your son is using to to generate kind of like the video and basically the whole game yet, or is it still
Well,
largely human monitored?
to be in full disclosure, I have 5 sons, all of
Okay.
which are in the game business of some sort. And the guy who's doing most of the programming is my youngest son, Wyatt. But my oldest son has a thing called 2-bit circus. And he has, think of it as the arcade of the future. And it's on the 3rd Street Promenade in Santa Monica.
Mm-hmm.
And has a lot of very interesting experiential games that are kind of a cross between escape rooms and they call them story rooms, where you go in and you're playing a game, but you're immersed in it. One of the things he has that I love is this AR VR headset set of games where you can actually run around in Mario Land and punch mushrooms and bricks and
Oh
what
wow.
have you, and you have to walk. I mean, it's uh, he's got one program where you put him on in a parking lot, but it doesn't look like a parking lot. It's a maze, and you have to find yourself through the maze, but it's all virtual. And so I love that stuff that's coming along, where now you can. Um, and the thing that's interesting, a lot of people get motion sickness in VR.
Mm-hmm.
If you add the AR portion to the VR, it totally gets rid of motion sickness, which I think is a big step forward.
Huh. Interesting. And this is in, you said Santa Monica.
Right.
That sounds really interesting
It
to go
is.
and
It's just
experience that.
great. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think I've never heard of such a thing. That sounds like a one of a kind experience.
Well, think about Mario Kart. Have you ever played Mario Kart?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Think about being on a tricycle in VR, where now you are in Mario Kart.
Oh, neat.
But the world and the obstacles and all that are synthetic. And it turns out that in a parking lot, you can pedal as fast as you can and and not not run into walls and what have you. It's pretty interesting.
There's just so much to so much that's coming up. Where are with AI, and I guess where are you spending most of your time these days with AI, if I might ask, across these different projects that you're often involved with? I know you're involved with the stuff that we do at Perrone Robotics with Autonomy, of course, but
Right.
um,
I'd say that most of my right now, I'm trying to get LabLore funded, and I used AI in my deck, so a lot of the
mhm.
pictures and the pitch deck was AI generated and modified and
Neat.
made better. I'm using AI now. I wrote a science fiction book a few years ago, and I never ever got it satisfactorily edited. And I'm using ChatGPT to do an edit spin on it. You know, I think the story is with books, they are they're published through exhaustion as opposed to completion.
Yep. I would have to agree with that.
Yeah.
I made the mistake of writing a 1,500-page technical book, two of them, back in the late 1900s, or
Ouch.
1999 and maybe 2000. The um, dollars per hour that you get just don't work out.
Not at all. There has to
Not
be
at all.
another thing. Well,
So that's the advantage of AI. Here's just throw it your draft and have it copy edit. Shaping the future of education. Yes.
that's my latest book, me and Leah. And it's kind of a manifesto, but it's like you say, the dollar per hour doesn't work. But it's really helped us with Exodexa because it's kind of our business plan in a book form. Not a lot of companies have that. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's fantastic, and so that's the gaming fused with education
Correct.
endeavor, and then the other one is sort of the AI tutor.
No, the book that I've got right now is basically full on science fiction with a lot of sex.
Okay. All right. I guess I meant the other company, yeah, but the book sounds
No.
good.
Well, no, it was the thing where I do this thing every year where I found that well, I started by saying you want to get old, but you don't want to get dumb. And so I did a deep dive on neurogenesis, and it turns out that different is neurogenic, habits are not. And that, for example, I probably learned to play chess when I was 8 or 9. And it was very neurogenic for me probably until aged 12. Then even if you play every day, that's not going to help. Or like Sudoku. When you first learn it, neurogenic. But then, it just tapers off.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, okay, how do I keep doing different things? And so January 1 of every year, I put these slips of paper that have a challenge that I can accomplish part-time in a year. I put them in a hat, I pull out 11 of them, number them 2 to 12, throw the dice, and I have to do that one. And I do that so that I don't cheat.
Mm-hmm.
And one year, it said, write a book. And usually when you think about writing a book, you think about it getting published and all that, but I just had to do it to get it. But what happens, like I would have never graduated from college if I didn't have a girlfriend to correct my papers, because the English language and me are not good friends. And I don't spell, and I'm a little dyslexic. But you find out that they're editors and various things, and before you know it, I had a published book, a New York Times bestseller. And I said, well, okay, that's cool. And, and I've done several things like that. One year it was do art, and that was when I was doing a lot of nanos and that, because I decided I was going to do kinetic art. And anyway, I'm kind of rambling. What was my point here? Anyway, and when I was talking about writing a book, I went in and it said, science fiction is primarily driven by young, geeky men, and that their idea of a sexual encounter is to have the woman attack him, because they don't want to be the alpha male. And so I thought, I can write a story about that. And I did.
Well, I was going to say we could put something in the chat GPT, but it might flag it as inappropriate content. I don't know.
I tried as hard as I could to make this book as inappropriate as possible.
Can't wait to read it.
I'll send you a copy if you'd like.
Oh yeah, please do. That's awesome. Well, Nolan, it's always a pleasure, and this will be I don't know, almost episode 29 or 30. I mean, I haven't quite kept up to the one episode per week cadence that I set out to do, but I thank you for making me start this podcast, and thank you for being on 2 episodes, and as always, sharing your insights into everything technology and sexually deviant as well. So I appreciate that.
Well, I'm going to leave you with my favorite joke.
Okay.
Little Johnny went to school. And the teacher said, "Johnny, what's the difference between ignorance and apathy?" He said, "Oh, I don't know, and I don't care."
Okay. Fantastic.
Is that a good ending?
Yes, that's perfect. Well, thank you, Nolan.
Actually, I've got one more.
Oh, please. Yeah, let's go.
Okay. The past, present, and future walked into the bar. It was tense.
It was tense, yes.
These are slightly cerebral.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
No, it's good.
Thanks,
it's
Paul.
Good. Well, thank you so much. Thank you, Nolan.
Good fun.
I hope you enjoyed the show Driven with me, Paul Perrone, your host. Don't forget to check us out at driven.show on the web, and give us a thumbs up or subscribe here if you like the show. Thank you for listening in. See you soon.
In with grit, stone tough, dusty boots, and life is rough. Farmer tills the earth with care, working hard with hands laid bare. Fields are green, crops grow high, cattle roam under the sky. Both are men of solid pride. Lives are intertwined worldwide. Cowboy, agricultor, deben ser amigos. Ambos sueñan con trigos y vaqueros testigos. En la tierra que trabajan con vigor. Cada uno es un luchador. Over hills and plains they travel far, one on horseback, one by car. Dreams of future times unscathed, united they are both brave. Morning sun, their silent bond, nature's whispers far beyond. One wrangles cattle with steel and might, one makes soil his daily fight. Cowboy and agricultor deben ser amigos. Ambos sueñan con trigos y vaqueros testigos. En la tierra que trabajan con vigor, cada uno es un luchador. and plains they travel far, one on horseback, one by car. Dreams of future times unscathed, united they are both brave. Cada uno es un luchador.